Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome to Sustainable Pricing for Products and Services. My name's Dante St James, coming from very, very sunny, dry season Darwin today. Just the top of, I think, about 32 today. My sleeves are a little tight. What's going on? Trying to put on a gun show today. Hey, it's all about making sure your pricing is sustainable and knowing how to make your pricing work. I'll share this screen and we will get underway. Here we go. A quote here from Catherine Delahaye Payne, who's a very, very capable and very, very in-demand business measurement and accountability professional in the States. Says the moment you make a mistake in pricing, you're eating into either your reputation or into your profits. We don't want you to be doing either of those things. So let's see if we can get some sensible approaches on how to do your pricing. What we're going to cover today is the pricing quandary and how little or how much should you charge, how little should you charge, and why that's such a problem. We're going to look at the reality of today's bargain price customer. We'll look at the 7 different considerations you'll need to look at in pricing and look at building your pricing model into a spreadsheet of sorts. So I've got a spreadsheet that I've used. I've made a copy of that to show you, I guess, the principles of how that works out, how I include all the little different things that I need to include in that, including then giving myself sales targets for my team on how many of different things we need to sell as the year goes over. Before we get underway, this is presented to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program in conjunction with Regional Development Australia Brisbane and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. You'll be able to watch this later on YouTube. I'll be putting it up onto YouTube and Facebook a little bit later on. It'll be visible on both my own channel and that of Business Station. So if you need to look for those, just go to YouTube, search either my name. You're only going to find me. I'm the only one around. And there's going to be Business Station as well, who has well over 400 different videos available from myself and other advisors and presenters on the program. A bit about me. My background is studying marketing and business information systems at University of New South Wales, Sydney, as well as a Master of Business Information Systems there. Thank you to a previous employee for paying for all that. The Chartered Institute of Marketing, I've done 6 different levels of qualifications with them, as well as doing a bunch of micro credentials with TAFE New South Wales. Not that I know there's a New South Wales thing in there. I haven't actually lived in New South Wales since the 90s. So I just tend to have studied remotely with those institutions because they're the ones I ended up with. I also work with Facebook's Blueprint Certified Lead Trainer community. So I'm a trainer for Facebook, both in Australia and globally. And I work as a digital marketing associate and media planning professional on their behalf as well. Google's Digital Springboard program and several other different government programs, such as this one, ASBAS, as well as the New Business Assistance with NICE program in the Northern Territory. So what is the pricing quandary? The pricing quandary can be best be sort of figured out as being something that try to work out whether your pricing is too high or too low. That's basically what it is. It's not like there's a rule book that says, okay, you're selling scented candles. Here is the market price or the guide price for what you should be charging. Usually the only people who give you those prices are network marketing and affiliate marketing programs. So they give you very tight pricing structures to follow. But what if you are producing the whole thing yourself? What if you are producing all of the services you provide yourself as well? How do you price those, especially when maybe no one else is doing quite what you do? Now, if you want to pop some questions in the Q&A and the chat window, we're live on Zoom right now. For those people who are on watching this later on through YouTube, just pop your comments down below and we'll come back and answer those over a period of time. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, whichever you're watching it on, because we'd like to be able to bring you more of this kind of content in the future, and whack on the bell notification too, so you'll be notified whenever anything new comes through. So a general rule that's been given, and it's kind of like one of those throwaway comments, almost like the business version of an old wives' tale. If you've got too many customers and projects happening, then you're not making much money. It means that your pricing is too low. Now, I'm just going to have to unshare my screen just for a second because Canva's decided to have a bit of a play up and decided not to play the way it's meant to. So I'll quickly just reload that. Thank you, Canva, for giving me no end of nightmares when it comes to our presentations here. So I'll get back up to the page we're at once everything loads nicely. And here we go. Present again. My apologies for this. Sometimes Canva just doesn't want to play nicely. Otherwise, it's such a great program. I don't know if you've been using it much, but for presentations, it really is good, except when it goes a little bit wobbly in the middle of a presentation. So starting again, if you've got too many customers and projects happening, but you're not making a lot of money out of them, it generally is an indication that your pricing is too low. So if your pricing is too low, you haven't got the money coming in, but you do at least have lots of work. You're really busy. Well, if you're not making money, all that busyness is not going to be very helpful for you. But at the other side, if you've got too few customers and too few projects happening and you're still not making any money, then your pricing is too high. But that's a really oversimplified way of looking at pricing, simply because there's other things that go into it. And it might be a very simple test, but it really doesn't take into account things like what people are able to pay when it comes to trust or reputation or some kind of attraction to your brand value, or maybe your marketing that you've been doing has got people willing to pay a little bit more, or your popularity might be getting you a disproportionate amount of your market coming to buy your stuff rather than buying someone else's. So this is when you go, well, okay, the too much too little thing doesn't quite work because there's a lot of other factors to bring in there. And this is what you'll learn about pricing is there's quite a few factors you may need to look at. So let's look at example, the difference between, say, McDonald's and Grilled, two big burger companies here in Australia, chains with stores all over the place. Of course, Macca's is quite a bit bigger than Grilled, but let's take a look at maybe some very similar products they might have. Let's say for McDonald's, they've got this premium product called a grass-fed beef burger, and you get that in a large meal for about $13.80. So overall, not a hugely priced takeaway meal. It's actually reasonably priced, and it's got what they call premium ingredients. So the grass-fed beef is a premium ingredient, as is, the cheese that they're using and the grilled onions and the relish that they're putting on there. They've priced this and promoted this as a premium product, much like the equivalent from Grilled, which is the mustard and pickled burger. So again, very premium products, a very, very similar layout to what, say, the grass-fed beef burger has at McDonald's, but this one's $23.20. So your difference between your $13.80 and your $23.20 is just a little under $10 extra to go and eat at Grilled, and that's with chips, so regular chips and a large drink. So McDonald's in the same suburb, though, still sells a lot more burgers than Grilled do. That would give you an indication that probably people are basing this on price. So why would someone very deliberately want to spend $10 more on every time they spend on a similar meal? So they go buy the mustard and pickled from Grilled, knowing full well that they're spending $10 more for something with really, really similar ingredients. Like, there's not much that's different between these two burgers. They are really, really similar in terms of what their makeup is. And a lot of this could be that there's a perception of value that is at play. So people are more willing to pay $10 more for a burger meal at Grill because there's a perception that it's a better value burger. Now, this burger is no bigger than the McDonald's one. It's no hotter, it's no fresher. The ingredients are so similar that you could interchange almost any part of that except maybe the bread roll, and it'd be the same burger. But there might be also, in the grilled category, a perception that there's quality. And that even works in McDonald's own menu, where you compare the grass-fed beef burger against an Angus burger, which may be around similarly priced, or even a quarter pounder, which, if you took a quarter pounder and added the Big Mac salad on top of it, it'd probably be the same burger as what Grilled's trying to do. But there is a perception that what you're getting from Grilled is handmade, hand-produced. You're seeing the open kitchen. You're seeing everything going on, where McDonald's a little bit behind the scenes. You can't really see everything that's going on in there, and it feels like it's a bit mass-produced. Well, it is mass-produced, and so is Grilled. But there is a perception also for that $10 more burger that there's a health benefit, because of the way that Grilled have positioned themselves in the market as opposed to what McDonald's have done. McDonald's have positioned themselves as convenience, family restaurant. Grilled have positioned themselves as a healthy alternative. They're healthier burgers. They've got less calories in them. They've got less additional, preservatives and whatnot in them. But then you compare that to the nutritional charts at McDonald's too. The two burgers are practically the same. But for some reason, grilled has a perception of extra value with it. It has a perception of extra quality with it. It has a perception of being healthier for you than what the McDonald's alternative is. But there's also a potential there for status of the person eating there. If you were to take someone out on the first date to Macca's, they would laugh at you and say, yeah, not today, mate. See you later. You take someone to grilled, whilst it's not, fine dining and silver service, it's better than McDonald's, right? Why is it better than McDonald's? The seating's no different, really. It's a burger restaurant. You can eat in, you can take away, you can get it on Uber Eats even. There's not really a great deal of difference except for the market positioning and the price. Now, because the price is higher, because the market positioning is higher, because there is a perception of quality, a perception of value, and perception of health, then it would be a better place to go. Now, you're probably quite young if you went on a first date to grilled, but it's perceived as a much more acceptable place to go on a first date than what McDonald's is. But the products are practically the same. So what's at play here? It's just a problem that people shop for things other than price sometimes. Not everyone is going to shop for everything based upon the price. So in my own example, say at Coles. So in my weekly shopping basket that I'll do from Coles, I have a choice of using either the Q Cola, which is the no brand $1 bottle, 1.25 liter bottle of no sugar or zero branded cola from Coles, $1. Yet I will always get Pepsi Max at $2.42. Now, side by side, if I was to taste these two, there also is a small taste difference. The formulas are a little bit different, whilst there is a slight different ingredients mix because of maybe using a different sweetener or just a different mix of formula for those two drinks. They're close enough to each other to be essentially almost the same thing. But one is 2.4, it's 142% more than what the other is. And yet I will always put the Pepsi Max, even if it's not at full price, it's at special price or not at special price, but at full price, I'll always put that in my basket. That's the one I'll always get, as opposed to the Coles brand one. Now, why is that? Well, Pepsi Max, I've had most of my adult life. It's a drink that I've become very known to. Like I'm always the guy who brings a bottle of Pepsi Max to the barbecue because I don't want to drink the beer. So there's always that. And then there's always that, having dinner and having friends around, you pull out the drinks and you got Pepsi Max or you got Q Cola. People will know you're the cheapskate if you got the Q Cola. Or if you pull out the Pepsi Max, at least you don't look like someone who shops the home brands. Yet at the same time, I will then go to something like ice creams. So I can get the full priced Magnum Almonds 4-pack for $9. It's often on special for about $7, but let's just say $9. Or I can get the irresistible Coles Almond 4-pack. They're actually a little bit bigger for $3.80. Now, I won't spend the extra for Magnum almonds because the perceptible difference to me between the two products isn't that great. I can taste the Coles almond ice cream and I can taste the Magnum almond ice cream. And to me, the difference isn't great enough for me to want to bother about which one's the higher brand and which one's not, or whether the quality is or what the other is. To me, it's almost imperceptible. It's also that I put a different value on these ice creams than I put on the drinks. In the drinks, I say, yeah, I'm willing to spend more because, I have a lot more Pepsi Max in my life than I have almond coated chocolate ice creams. So the almond coated chocolate ice cream, I might have once a week. Pepsi Max, I'll have most days in my week. So I've got a far greater value on top of Pepsi Max than what I do on top of Street's Magnum almonds. And the same could be said for clothing. A lot of people will spend a lot of money on the outer clothing that they may wear once or twice a year, but buy cheap underwear, which they will wear a version of every single day of the year. So I buy one kind of underwear and it's the only underwear I ever buy. Chances are if you're sitting here, I'm wearing that same underwear every single day. I've got 12 pairs of it, but I don't literally wear the same one. But what I do is I've got a certain value on the underwear, which makes me want to get just that underwear and spend a certain amount of money on it. Whereas when it comes to shirts, I put more value in these shirts, which these underwear I wear every day. This shirt I may wear once a month. I've got a fairly big cycle of shirts to go through. So I'm putting a greater value on what I spend for shirts than what I spend on my underwear. It's funny how we just place different kinds of value on different kinds of products. And that's where the prices can vary dramatically. I'm not gonna lie, I buy my underwear at Kmart because they have this particular brand and pair of underwear that's one of their home brands that I love and have loved for years. And they continually produce it and I continually buy it. When they wear out, I get another lot. That's because I've seen that that's what I want. Now, I used to wear Calvin Klein underwear. I've got nothing wrong with them, but the Calvin Klein underwear didn't fit as well, didn't last as long. And so I just got these ones from Kmart all the time. So Mark's just asking, where do I get the $3.80 box of ice cream from? It's from Coles. It's a Coles brand one. So it's, I don't know if it's $3.80 where you are, but it's definitely $3.80 where I am. So you can get it as a regular price. Hopefully if Coles does home delivery, you might be able to get there too. Everything I refer to in groceries is from Coles because that's just generally where I shop. And you might say, is that a price decision or have I got some brand value that comes with Coles? Simple solution is that when I shop at Coles, my flyby points go onto my Virgin Australia Velocity frequent flyer account. Only reason why I do it. And I've used Virgin Australia quite often for flights and I've got quite a lot of status with them. So that's why I shop at Coles, not for any other purpose or price. Even if it was cheaper for me to go to Woolworths, I'd probably still end up going to Coles. So the reality of today's customer when it comes to it though, is that it's a bit complex. We've looked at things like Facebook Marketplace and it taught us that we should be able to get what we want for free and when we want it. And I'll tell you now that Facebook Marketplace people are horrible people to serve because they expect everything for free or for 20 bucks and they want you to deliver it to them for free. They want to get it for free, get it delivered to them for free, and they'll kick up a stink at you if you don't do that for them. It's a very different kind of crowd at Facebook Marketplace. But then we go further and people on Amazon, it's taught us to always check for a cheaper price online before we buy it at the shops. So we say, oh, I'm going to buy this lawnmower and I'm going to see what it's like at Bunnings and I'm going to see what it's like at Mitre 10 and I'm going to go see what it's like at the local motor shop. And then I'm going to go on Amazon and check the price for it on there to see if I can get it cheaper and delivered to me as well. I don't even have to go there. So Amazon, eBay, all of those marketplaces online have taught us to go online to look for a cheaper deal. And you think about that. People have got an expectation that certain things they'll get for free and delivered to them for free and that you'll serve it to them on a silver platter. You've got people who are used to checking for cheaper prices through cheaper marketplaces. You've got people who now know that anything you can buy in a gift or a homeware store has probably got a version of a knockoff of a Kmart for $7 or IKEA. If you're in a market that's got IKEA, it could be Kmart or IKEA have got really similar homewares and really similar like kitchenware and soft furnishings and all that. And we've learned that we don't have to spend a lot of money on those things. We don't have to go to the little local store down the street that's selling gifts and homewares. We'll go to Kmart and get it way, way cheaper. My bathroom towels, I bought those from Kmart. My bed sheets, the quilt cover set, got that from Kmart. The sheets I didn't get from Kmart. I got them from a bit more of an expensive place because I like nice sheets. But things like cushions, home furnishings, fake plants that are sitting behind me here, mostly got those from Kmart when I could have got it from a local provider who charges 4 to 5 times more than what Kmart does. Because Kmart has taught me that I can decorate my home and make it look semi-decent for $7. And then there's Uber Eats have taught us, and if you've got that in your town, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's taught us that all our expectations we had of pricing pretty much get thrown out the door when it comes to getting something delivered to our door. It's convenient, it's hot, it's fresh, and we don't care that it costs us 20% more to buy it. We got it delivered and we got it there, and there's a perception of value for that. So even though we've got a consumer base that says, hey, we want it for free, hey, we want it cheaper, hey, we want to get it from a place, there's a store in every town, and hey, we want to get it delivered to us and we're willing to pay more, you can see that the consumer base is really confused when it comes to pricing. They'll value something like Uber Eats, but they won't value going to a homeware store where they're going to pay more than $7 for a fake plant. So it's a really messed about pricing model that we're in this country, in this world, really. I think globalization has brought that on and made pricing really difficult. So where are we at today? In Australia, according to the ABS and the Consumer Price Index studies through the ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, don't forget to do your census tonight, by the way, 72% of retail purchases will be made based upon price alone. So when someone's buying spoons from Kmart, when they're buying bottles of water, when they're buying all sorts of things that are necessary parts of their day, a box of Wheat Bix and all that. A lot of these purchases are being made on price alone. So they'll actually skip it at Coles to get it cheaper at Woolies, or they'll skip it at IGA to get it cheaper at Coles, or they'll bundle buy things in bulk at something like Costco. If you've got Costco in your market for Brisbane people, they'll go and buy that because they're going to save a lot of money over a long term. Buying, a pallet of toilet paper because it's $1 a roll, as opposed to buying a $9 pack of 12 rolls of toilet paper. It will be something that people will do. They'll go to that much trouble. And that's why stores like Coles and Woolworths exist, where they bring the prices down to a very low amount with no margin on it, very little margin on it. It's why there's penny pincher menus at McDonald's where they're not making money off that. It's a very low margin, a low margin model. And it's also a place like Costco exists and Kmart exists, where you can go and buy things at the cheapest possible rate that are not bad. They're not terrible. Some of it's rubbish, but some of it's not. Some of it's actually pretty good. But then 28% of retail purchases will be made on other factors. They'll be made upon the brand name. They'll be made upon this is what I always buy. So for instance, I might go in and I'll always buy the bigger peanut butter because I used to get the Kraft peanut butter, and I always want to have that because I always have had that, and I won't buy the much cheaper home brand or the Woolworths brand or the Coles brand peanut butter. Now, only recently I changed over and stopped buying the bigger peanut butter because I just realized it doesn't really taste much different to the stuff that's coming from the Coles brand. And the Coles brand is about a third of the price. So I think, well, why would I spend the extra money for something that's not really that different? And it's not like I value my peanut butter that much. I put a bit on a bit of bread or I use it for cooking or something, and I don't even notice the flavor change. So I've trained myself into getting the cheaper thing. I don't place enough value on the bigger name anymore to be going, oh, I want to buy that because that's what I always buy. But it takes a lot to get people from buying things based upon price to buying things based upon other values. So to get someone from seeing value in your product when it's priced above competitors is actually a difficult game to play. When you look at that as well, for services, so if you're providing a service, not a product, it's a little bit easier for people with services because 56% of service purchases will only be made on price alone. So still a majority, but only just. But 44% of service purchases will be made based upon those other factors like familiarity, brand values, agreeing with the approach that people make, not just price alone. Now with services, there's a lot more differentiators between products. There's not a great deal of difference between one peanut butter and the 38 other brands of peanut butter that are available on the shelf. But there may be infinite differences between my website creation studio and the thousands of other website designers in Australia. We're all going to have our little points of difference, our geographic locations, all of that kind of thing. So bear this in mind, that when you're pricing yourself and you want to say, I want to be a premium product in retail, you're going for the 28% of purchases that are actually based upon premium purchasing. And that's even right down to Louis Vuitton handbags and the difference between that and a $20 handbag from Kmart. They sell handbags. I know my mother got one once. Then in the service-based industries, you're then making assumption if you want to not price the same as the competitors who are in chains and in if you're doing a lawnmower service, for instance, and Jim's Mowing has a pretty consistent price across the board for their lawn mowing, and you want to go above that because you think you're providing a more premium service, just bear in mind the minority, not a small minority, but the minority of people are shopping based upon those factors like familiarity of the brand or because of your service offering, as opposed to the price alone. This guy does $40 an hour for mowing. This guy does 60. The difference is one of them takes 1 hour, one of them takes 2 hours. If you can work out the maths, you will be still shopping upon price alone. But if you're shopping with someone because you like what their truck looks like, as opposed to any of the tangible things that will affect your purchase, then you're shopping upon those other factors. So a customer tends not to value what it is you do, and this is particularly relevant to service-based businesses. They're not going to value what you do until they desire it. So if there's no desire for that product, they put no value on it, which means they're not willing to pay anything more than they absolutely have to, if they need to go and get that thing at the time. But if they really desire it, then suddenly value appears, and marketing and branding and your position and reputation, all those things are going to move the customer from having no desire and no value in your product to suddenly seeing a desire and seeing a value in your product. And that's when things start to become more expensive, where you can start to bring up your rates. But even though you want to do that and you want to make someone desire what it is you're doing, you're putting your marketing out there, there's a world of others doing exactly the same. They're all competing for that money. Often said in another pricing seminar that I did was that if your product costs $3,000, there are so many things competing for that $3,000 right now. Harvey Norman is wanting you to spend $3,000 on a new lounge suite. Apple wants you to spend $3,000 on a new computer. The local private school wants you to spend $3,000 on the next year of education for your child. There's so many things all competing for that, apart from the lifestyle and well-being coach that you might be trying to get that $3,000 for someone for your reasons as well. So there's always going to be, you're not just up against in competition other coaches. You're not just up against other coffee providers. You're not just up against other people from who make scented candles or sell consultation services. You're up against everything else that same money can buy that you are offering it for. So if you're offering something for $3,500, everything else that $3,500 could go to is in competition with you, which makes you think, wow, I'm in competition with a lot of stuff right now. So the marketing side of this, we're not going to go into. What we will go into, though, is more about the pricing and what some of the considerations you should have with pricing are. The first one being that you need to know your market. You need to know whether your market wants to actually buy what you're doing and they actually see value in it. And that can be done through asking two questions. How much are people willing to pay for what you do or for what you provide? And then secondly, how much do your competitors charge for similar products that may be available either in your market or online or something like that? So the first thing is how much they're willing to pay. That can often be found in how much people are already charging who are already in the market. So if you're not alone in your market, you're not alone in your industry, there's others doing it, and you see their pricing, that gives you a pretty good idea of the range that people are comfortable paying for those services or products in. And then seeing how much your competitors charge is where you get that information from. Now, not all services are very easy to find their price range. I'm one of the very few web people around and social media people around that actually has guide pricing on my website. I have it. Pretty much no one else does. Whilst I put it on there, I'm going, oh, people might think that it's expensive and be turned away. Good. That's good. I don't want them to be thinking that it's too expensive. I want them to see the value in what I do. So if they'll look at that price and go, yes, that is value, or they'll go, no, that is too expensive. The no, that's too expensive people are not people I want to serve. They're not people who I want to work with, because if they don't value what I do, why would I want to spend my time chasing after them, getting them to pay invoices they don't want to pay and trying to convince them at every angle that what I'm doing and justifying what they're paying me, when I could just work with people who see the value in what I do. And you could see the people that would see the value in what you do rather than the people who are always looking to get the discount. It doesn't matter what you quote, and they'll say, oh, that's a little bit high. Can't you go a little lower? And I've now got to the position after 6 years in my marketing business that I now say, no, I can't. And I actually don't even say can't. Can't is not actually the right word. I say, no, I won't. And if they go, oh, why? Okay, because my price is my price. You don't walk in the Coles and argue with them about the price of a roast chicken. You either get that fresh roast chicken piping hot and fresh now, or you wait until just before closing time and you go and get the chicken at half price. But the problem is you have to go in at about, quarter to midnight, and you have to go in and be at risk of not getting it. So yeah, by all means, if my pricing's too high, then you're more than welcome to try it. And in fact, I've got a bunch of my competitors who I'll point you to who do things for a lower price, and I'm happy to point you to them. I won't get your $1,500, but that's okay. I'm looking for $5,000. So in this first thing though, price matching is fraught with problems. It requires a lot of research into what the prices are that people are paying, and also the level of business that person is getting. You may want to go and say, well, I want to produce my, let's just say, my style consultation service. So let's just say, for instance, you are a personal shopper, and that's what you do for your business. You might say, okay, so I know other personal shoppers are doing this for $50 a session. So I'll look at that and go, oh, I'm going to have to match the market and go $50 a session. But you know darn well that you should be charging $80 per session for that, or $150 per session for that, because you're that good. You know you're that good and you deserve that amount of money. And $50 an hour just doesn't seem quite right to you. So you've got to do some research and realize that whilst that person may be accepting $50 an hour, they're doing a lot of their stuff at David Jones, who's actually also paying them an extra $25 an hour just on top of that. So they're actually getting $75 an hour. So if you go and do pricing that's based upon your cheapest competitor and you go, oh, I've got to match them, bear in mind, they may be using offshore staff. They may be buying things in templated bundles. They might be volume pricing because they're buying 100,000 units of this, where you only have 20 units. So you're getting it at a much more expensive price than them. So therefore their margin's going to be higher when they go to market with that. There's a lot of thought and a lot of consideration before you just simply go and change your rate. So please don't just set about price matching because that's what everyone else does. Whilst your competitors' rates will be a guide for you to go and check out, they're not they're not the instruction of what you should be charging, because you don't know the full story about whether that competitor is actually making money. I know in a lot of service businesses, they might charge very little for their services, for their consultation, for their websites, for their social media, for their graphic design, simply because they're only doing it as a side gig. They don't really mind. They're not trying to make tons of money out of it. They're doing it for extra pocket money. They might be 18 years old in their first year of university. And so this is just a side gig job to them. This is not them having to pay their bills based upon this. So be aware that your price is going to be about your context. Secondly, is how you price yourself according to which technique and which kind of pricing strategy you follow. And I've got a bit more about these later, so I won't go too deeply into them. But the first one is that there's cost plus pricing and value-based pricing. Now, the difference between the two is that cost-based pricing is all about taking all those things like your materials, your labor, your utilities, all your costs, and then adding on a margin on top. So I know a lot of the retail margins, hospitality margins are often all those costs plus 30%. Or cost plus 20% could be it. Or if you're working in the digital field, quite often it's cost plus 500%, because it's something which you do once and you never make money off again. So you need to have that covered for the fact that you don't make any further money out of that. So when you look at those prices, that's cost plus pricing. This is what pretty much a lot of our retailers do, the chain stores, people who are working in very commoditized industries. And by commoditized, I mean it's just very common, and it's very it's got a lot of cut rate sort of thing. So you look at with chemists, for instance. Chemists once upon a time were singly owned. There weren't chains. There was just cooperatives, and every chemist owned the chemist that they worked in, right? But these days, you've got Chemist Warehouse, and you've got Priceline, and you've got Amcal, and you've got Terry Wright White pharmacies, and you've got Sol Patterson pharmacies all over the country with chains and lots of them, and they own tons and tons and tons of the stores. So the difference now is that their pricing is going to be very much based upon very different sets of things. Their margins, because they're selling so much stuff, and Chemist Warehouse, let's face it, cheap for the prescription simply because they make all their money out of all those shampoo bottles and vitamin aisles and protein powders and makeup and all the other stuff that they're selling in there. And especially they make you wait for your prescription, so you'll go for a wander around there and you go, oh, that Dove deodorant, that smells really nice. I'll get some of that. That's cheaper than what they got it for Coles. They've also got a different sized can than what Coles has and what Woolies has. And they'll base it upon a much lower margin. They will also, and I'll show you a bit of this later, will take lower margins on some things and higher margins on other things. The other pricing model then is what we call value-based. Now, valuable-based is all the materials and your labor and utilities, all your costs, plus a margin, plus you'll add on extra value on top of that, extra margin on top. So this is the difference, say, between a leather handbag, which is sold at Strand Bags, and a leather handbag that's sold by Hermes. So Hermes, who makes very, very expensive handbags. So the difference there is that Strand Bags are selling, 20,000 units of handbags a day right across Australia in their many, many stores around the country. So you go in there and the handbag you're looking at might be $75. You're going, great, that's amazing. So you go to Hermes and they've got this handbag that might look a little bit similar. Looks a little bit more high end, but that's probably because it's got the Hermes label on it and it's in a shop where they handle everything with white gloves. It's going to cost you, $15,500. So you look at all that and you go, handbag one costs $75. Handbag two costs $17,500. What's the actual materials, labor, and utilities difference in this? Is the difference in those things the same? Just because they take maybe a little longer to build the handbag from Hermes and it's a bit more handcrafted, instead of making 50,000 of them a month on a conveyor belt, they're making maybe 5 of them a month by hand. You go, well, it's not taking them that long to build it. The materials are around about the same amount, even though they might be more expensive materials. The costs of the lighting and the factory lights and the internet connections and all the software they're using and the labor they're using, it's probably not going to be that much greater at Hermes than what it is at the people who make the Strand Bags version. But what they've done is when they've added on their, say, 20 to 30% margin, they've gone even higher. And they've gone, because of status, because of this brand, because we've used crocodile leather instead of cow leather, we're going to make this hugely expensive because we are a luxury brand. And so that additional value on top is pricing themselves as a luxury or a premium service. Now, quite a lot of times, this might be the same for working with a social media manager, that you've got certain social media managers who will do all your social media posts for a month for $250. And yep, Bob's your uncle. Or you get another social media manager who says, no, it's going to cost you nearly $12,000 for me to do it, because they've got a very different set of pricing. Yes, the materials, the labor, the utilities, the margin are all there. And then the more expensive one says, well, I'm certified in this. I've spent 7 years doing this. I've done this. I work for these people. I do look at my quality of work is much greater. I'll spend more time talking to you. And I'm in Australia, not the Philippines. Then that additional value comes into play. Number 3, and I will go more into those pricing models very shortly because there is more to say about those. At number 3, we look at what all your costs are. And this is where a lot of small businesses just starting out, myself included, I did this until I was pointed out to it by my 19-year-old first employee who showed me how to price myself better. It's looking at all the different things that go into your product or your service, your materials, your labor, your premises, your rent, your utilities, your training that you've had to undergo to do that thing, the packaging that you have to wrap everything else up in, the software you've got to use to run your business, the education you've had to have in order to get this experience in what you do, the fuel it takes for you to drive, to drop it off at the post office, the postage, the marketing, the advertising costs. All that stuff has to be factored in to the price you're going to have at the end. So when we went back a few of those to the cost plus pricing, these all contribute to that cost plus pricing, or to the cost part of the cost plus pricing. There's a lot in there. Little things you got to consider. Like, for instance, every single thing that's on my desk, right from the microphone I bought for $400 at, where did I get it from? Was it JB Hi-Fi? Somewhere else? No, I don't think JB Hi-Fi sell these. I bought it at a much higher end audio store. Got this and was able to, I need to then, what is called amortize the cost of this across everything that I do. So I'm going to say, okay, if it costs me $125,000 to get my education, then that cost has to be factored into me being able to factor that across every product I ever have. So if I go, okay, $125,000, let's say it's $1,000 per year for, well, not for 125 years. Let's just say $5,000 a year of value in my education is across a certain amount of years. Then for every product I sell, I've got to factor in a percentage, a fraction of that education cost into my pricing. Same with fuel and software and packaging and rental of your premises and the air conditioner that's keeping it cool and the shirts you have to buy to look good. All those things need to be factored into your costs. And then you take all those factors in, and there's tons of them. There's going to be a lot more of them than what I've displayed on here. You divide by the volume of what you expect to sell in order to find what your break-even point is. So let's just say for every $5,000 website you're going to build, it's going to cost you $1,000 all up. So in order to get my break-even point for all the things I'm going to spend this year, which is going to cost me, $5,000 to make it, I want to make it for $5,000. It's going to cost me $1,000 to do it. How many of those am I going to make over a year? And I've got this spreadsheet later on that I'll show you that I use. And it's a copy of it, not my exact one, because that would be exposing everybody on the internet to what my pricing strategies are. But if you take all that into account and you divide by the volume of what you expect to sell, that's how you reach that break-even point. So a $1,000, how many $1,000 items or training packages do you have to sell to make back everything you've had to spend to put that out to market? And that's just giving you your break-even point. That's not giving you then what pays for you, what pays for your wages, pays for your staff, what all those other things on top of it. That's just breaking even. It's not making any profit on top. And the whole point of business is to make profit, right? It's to make cold, hard cash so that we can actually jump ahead of where we are in life rather than just simply buying ourselves a job. Number 4 is a closer look now at cost plus pricing and some of the things you need to consider as part of it. So at cost plus pricing, we look at, yes, the labor, the materials, the utilities, and we add on a margin. We understand that. We saw that before. But we also have to be willing to look at it and go, well, the margin that we're going to add on top needs to be within a reasonable distance of what the market's charging out there. So if you decide to charge a much, much, much higher margin because you've had to do that to cover your costs, or you've had to do it because that's what you expect to make out of your business, or that may be the only product and you can't sort of spread your margins across multiple products, then you may find that your margin's too high and the market's not willing to pay for it. Then if that's the case, you have to find a way of either increasing your price or reducing your costs. And usually the number one place to go to, if the market's not willing to pay for your product at the price you want to sell it at, is you need to reduce your costs. And those costs could be in the form of, well, this example, for example, right? You've got herb-infused olive oil that you've been making. It ends up priced at twice the cost of your highest price competitor. Really, really expensive for you to make this because you're hand bottling it, hand making it, hand growing all the herbs. You're doing everything by hand. So it's becoming money. It's going to cost you $50 a bottle to sell this stuff. Whereas at a competitor on the shelf at Coles with an infused olive oil is $25. So what you got to do is either find a cheaper supply of your ingredients. You got to get your oil for cheaper, or you got to find a way of getting your herbs cheaper, all your ingredients, your postage, all that stuff. You've got to find a cheaper way of doing it. Or you could possibly reduce the labor by sending it offshore. And that's what so many companies have done in Australia, where they said, well, we can't compete. We can't sell these Bonds underwear, these Bonds singlet, these Bonds t-shirts at a price that's competitive enough to be in department stores to sell them in a big volume without making them in China. We can't make them in Australia for the same price. Therefore, we're not able to be competitive and do this at a price that people are willing to pay without moving offshore. And this is the reason why so much stuff has been offshored from Australia, is that our labor prices in terms of what people are willing to pay are too high. We've got used to, remember I told you, Amazon's taught us to check for a cheaper product elsewhere. Kmart's made us think that everything costs $7. Facebook Marketplace has made everyone get everything for cheap or free. Because we're now expecting to get rock bottom price for everything, then we have to find ways to remain relevant in our market. Remember, for that 78% of people who are buying retail items based on price. Or you decide that, well, actually, I'm going to be premium. And I'm going to go not just the cost plus pricing, but I'm going to do the next level, which is another look at that value-based pricing. Now, remember, this is all about all your costs plus your margin, plus an extra status lot you can add on top of that. So remember, we looked at that: materials, labor, utilities, all your costs, plus the regular margin, plus an additional value. And that additional value then can be in the form of things like exclusivity, because there's only 50 of these made every year. It could be because you've got a monopoly on your particular item. You're the only person who produces this. So therefore it becomes, again, quite exclusive. It could be because buying your watch, I was watching a guy, a friend of mine on Facebook, who's going through this heart-wrenching decision of whether to buy a Tag Heuer watch or a Philippe Patek watch, or going through all these like major like luxury brands. And honestly, it will not tell the time any better than what a watch from the local jeweler for $50 would do. But yet he's going through this because he knows that by wearing these things, it gives him status. It says, if I'm paying $7,000 for a watch, it shows that I can afford a $7,000 watch. Therefore, I have status. It might be because it's luxury. There's a brand associated with it. Philippe Patek, for instance, one of the most expensive watches in the world. Rolex, again, all those kind of things are very, very much about the status and the luxury and the brand values that are associated with those names. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the watch is better, or you'll get better use out of it, or that you'll use it more. It just means that it's going to be more expensive because of all these things that are made around it. When Toyota started making Lexus cars, the Lexus cars are no higher a quality build of car than a Toyota, but they are set apart by being different, by being a brand that's for luxury and a brand that's for the everyday. Now, the fittings inside, yes, will have a different grade of leather. They'll have a bit of wood grain in the dashboard and all that. But when you add up the cost of the materials it takes to build a Camry as opposed to the equivalent of a Camry in a Lexus vehicle, it doesn't add up the same. There is, yes, sure, the cost of the materials and all the stuff that's gone in it, plus a margin. But then with Lexus, there's all that, which might be just slightly more, but then there's this big jump, which is the luxury status, brand exclusivity, additional value that's added on top of it because it's a luxury brand. It doesn't necessarily have a big difference between a Hyundai i30 and a Toyota Corolla, but you can guarantee the Corolla will cost you more. Why? Does it cost you more to build a Toyota Corolla? Not really. They're built all around the world in just as cheap places as what a Hyundai i30 is. So why does the Toyota Corolla cost more? Again, status, luxury brand. It's considered to be more of a luxury item to own a Toyota Corolla than a Hyundai i30, for instance. It could also be the additional values built into if what you have provided is essential for something. So if you're selling textbooks, for instance, Pearson makes textbooks all over the world for universities and for schools. And because they've got this exclusivity and it's essential to the studies, they're able to charge like wounded bulls for textbooks. It's just ridiculous how much textbooks are. Or it could be that you're producing something that's bespoke or one-off. You're literally producing this one piece of art. So you can go, well, I'm not going to charge the same as a piece of pottery you can buy from Bunnings. So I need to charge appropriately because I've only made one of these. Bunnings makes 20,000 of those. So they can sell those for $1.50. I need to charge $500 for what I do because I only produced one of these and it is an absolutely exclusive. No one's ever made one like this before. So the additional value side of it comes in when you're maybe doing like a service. Let's just say you're a consultant, you're a business consultant and you're going into a business to do some work with them. There's 50 other business consultants doing pretty much the same stuff that you are. But for some reason, you're that bit more expensive and they've got you in because you have a reputation, a track record. You have the certain amount of exclusivity. There's a bit of status that comes with getting you in because, oh, we know they work with them down the road and what they were able to do with them was amazing. So we want to get them in and they're willing to pay that little bit more. I will spout exactly the same words as Gary Vaynerchuk would spout, but people will pay him $100,000 to come and speak at an event in Australia, where I'm lucky to get a paid event to be speaking in Australia. Not because I'm not as good as him, but there's a status and there's a certain amount of, he's a billionaire, I'm not a billionaire, that comes with that. So people are willing to pay not only the cost of getting someone into Australia to do that, but also an extra bit on top for the gravitas that comes with that particular consultant or speaker or coach or trainer, whatever that happens to be. Number 6, is looking at the context of your products. So when you look at that, we're looking at how does the addition of something like GST affect your prices? Does GST take you from that great little fine round number of it's $20 to $22? And 20 bucks might be the upper level of what people are willing to pay. Or maybe for your consulting services, you have a price of $999, but it's plus GST. So $999 comes in within the $1,000 budget that many people have. But once they pay GST, then it's a bit more. It's actually going over their budget. So you've got to be aware of when you do price yourself, what happens when you add GST. Also look at the possibility that some of your products or even services could have, excuse me, that's better. They could have lower margins on some things than others. Now, this is a case of things like McDonald's has loss leaders. Their penny pinching menu makes them no money, but they know that someone will buy a chicken cheeseburger for $1.80 or $2, but they'll also add on a drink, which they're going to make a great margin on. Likewise, I can do a free service such as a story brand assessment, but I know that out of every 10 story brand assessments I do, I get 2 people converting to a paying client for other things I do. So therefore I can have free services, low cost services, and then my higher cost services as I graduate people through that sales funnel of stuff. You might have different pricing for different locations. Your price in Indonesia may be very different to the price of what you get in Australia because your business's presence in Indonesia costs a lot less in real terms than what it costs to have an office in Australia. Or it could be just that getting things to Perth from Melbourne is much more expensive than getting things from Perth to Sydney. So people in Sydney are paying less because it costs you less to get it there. People in Perth are going to pay more because it costs you more to get it all there. Or you may just go, you know what, I'm going to have solid unit pricing across the board. I'm going to lose money on my people in Perth, but I'm going to make a really good margin on my people in Sydney. And then do you need to allow for things like, you need to plan, I should say, not play, for non-payment and slow payment. There's always going to be some time when you have clients that don't pay. Unless you take payment all up front, there's going to be some times when you've got loss of product, you've got loss of payment. So you've got to make sure you price that into it as well, particularly if you've got a pretty tight margins on your pricing. You'll need to take that into account. And this is what happens with retailers. They know that there's a certain amount, they call it shrinkage, a certain amount of shrinkage that will happen, which means that people stealing, loss of product, broken products, things they have to throw out, things they have to write off. All that is then written into their pricing for their current stuff. They've got massive algorithms that calculate all this on a day-to-day basis, minute-to-minute basis. It's quite phenomenal when you see behind the scenes of these big companies and the way they calculate things like prices. And of course, plan for the unexpected. Things will change. Pricing is not a set and forget thing. Market forces can change your pricing. Suddenly what you do is done better. Like think about graphic designers. They went through a massive change when Canva came about. So if you are a graphic designer and you were used to getting lots and lots of work and tons of, designing flyers, designing web graphics, making social media graphics, and suddenly Canva comes up and all those little things are now done by people themselves. You've just lost a whole heap of your revenue. So those market forces can change things. You have to go, well, I either have to get cheaper or I have to dump those kind of things and do more expensive stuff more often. Your costs could increase or decrease based upon supply, demand, all those things. Suddenly, if you were selling computers and all your parts that you're doing for repairing those computers are now twice the cost of what they were before, your pricing has to go up. That price rise has to be factored in because you can't expect it. You're not a charity. You're not going to be, you don't pay for the fact that prices go up and down. Your customer has to pay for that. And then watch your competitors as well, because they'll change things here and there. I know when I change my pricing to a very low margin to get some off-season work, my competitors moved with me. They came and brought their prices down as well. I sort of led with a lower price. And then once the season's over, I will come up to a higher price. And there is a season in what I do as well. This is kind of off-season right now, but it's actually, we haven't had an off season this year or the last year either. So usually we have prices that vary according to the time of the year, but not now. We've got the same price all year round. And don't base your branding around pricing. This is a really scary thing to do because it can cost you a lot of time and money repositioning yourself to be not that bargain guy. Now, for instance, Virgin Blue was the airline. Virgin Blue keeping the airfare. They were the low cost carrier. Now they're not. They're the mid-range carrier, and they've changed all their branding to suit that. So they're more like the casual business traveler, the small business traveler, as opposed to the Qantas business traveler, for instance. Or it could be that they've positioned themselves now as Virgin Australia, and it's more about there's nice lounges in the airports and nice uniforms by the staff, where it was a lot more casual and sort of much more cool and funky and fresh and yeah, just casual back in the old days under Virgin Blue. So if you base your whole position around your price like they did, it cost them then millions to update their brand when their pricing did decide to go up, and they had to change their name, they had to change their logos, everything about them needed to change. It went from a one class layout to a two class layout of having business class and economy class. So they've got three classes now. They've got economy plus, or whatever it's called, economy extra, whatever it's called, the mid-range flying as well. So if you base your pricing on that, I used to have a base around my thing saying that 100% Aussie always was, always will be. But the fact is, at some stage, to get my prices competitive, I had to offshore some stuff rather than doing it within Australia. So then suddenly I had to go and change all of that, because I said, oh, no dodgy offshore outsourcing. And next minute I was doing my dodgy offshore outsourcing. So I had to change all that because the market forces forced me to be able to do that kind of thing. Now, what I'm going to go into here is an example of a pricing spreadsheet that was designed for me quite some time ago. And this pricing spreadsheet I've got on Google here. So Google Sheets. Now, I've got nothing personal. I've got nothing personal in this, so you're not reading all my stuff. So what it is basically is a layout of how I put pricing in, and then it's showing me how many I, for instance, have to sell. So let's just say I've got a website creation at $3,600. So if I was to sell one of those a year, one at $3,600, then I had to have all these extra things added onto it. So all these things that cost me money. The whole website is going to cost $5,818 to get that all there. But to make money on those, once I have paid the contractor to make it, paid a proportion of the domain name, the hosting, I've then paid a proportion of the software. So I'm not paying $24,000 for that. I'm paying a proportion of the software, including a proportion of office rent, a proportion of device rentals and insurance and all those sort of things, and the advertising I'm putting in. Then I'm saying, well, the percentage total is, for one of these to advertise to get one of these clients, it's actually costing me almost the same amount. That's before I even start to take in things like tax. I haven't even added tax now. So what it would do is, for me to produce one of these, I will only make $5,818 a year. But if I make 10 of these a year, then suddenly I'm up to $58,000 a year. So it's starting to show me where it is. Now, my profit margin I'm making, so to make my break even, I need to sell 2 a year to break even. But at 10, I'm well above that. I'm now making $4,124 is the profit margin I'll make on each one of these. So on each one of these over a year, I'm making a lot more, because all these fixed costs are getting lower and lower and lower in their percentage the more that I happen to make. Now, if I take out this person here who was my previous employee, I'll take out him as a cost. Suddenly that will change it all, because there's a variable cost that I haven't factored in. So up here, I haven't got any of that sort of information in there. Or I could put in, he's costing me $50,000 a year. And then the business development manager is costing me $62,000 a year. It starts to then change all my costs over here. 62, 30, staff is, that should be that. So I've got a few problems with my formulas here, but it starts to tell me then, I've now got to make 3 now with those costs in order to break even. So I've got to sell at least 3. So suddenly 10 doesn't seem quite so many when I need to place 3 just to make my ends meet. Then I've got, like, for things, that's for a particular kind of website. This is now that's for subsidized websites from subsidies from government grants. If I then look at something like standard priced websites, then it's a different pricing model again. And then I've got SEO packages that are priced a certain way, and then SEO management packages that are priced a certain way. And it's telling me that in order to do this with one sale a year, it's actually telling me I actually need to sell 11 to break even. So if I look, then I got 5, it's still telling me I need 11 to break even. If I again go, okay, well, I'm still losing money down here on these. So what have I got to do? I've got to sell, let's say, make my 11, and suddenly I've now got close to that break even. I've actually gone into a small profit of $513.71. So this base SEO management, because of what I've got to pay people to do these and the proportions of all these things, my staff that I've got built in there as well, is end up going to cost me so much. But then if I want to then go, I'm going to take my business development manager and I'm going to offshore that, and it's now going to cost me $24,000. Suddenly that comes down and my profit and loss becomes higher on that. So factoring in all these different things to your spreadsheet, to your ideas of what you're going to do, is going to change how many you need to do. Suddenly I don't need 11 to make break even. I now need 9. And if that one employee who's going to be doing all my background work is also going offshore, let's just say that they're down to $24,000 now, suddenly I'm down to 8 to break even. So my costs in terms of staff, in terms of all the things I need to bear in mind for my management of the company, shows me my profit and loss of what I need to make. If I sell 11 per year, if I do that down to 8, you'll notice I made just a very, very, very small amount of money on that. And then it goes in through all of my different products, social media marketing, Google ads, all that, until I get over to the summary, which is like a spreadsheet of showing all the different things we do. And then the sales targets. It gives me then sales targets I need to reach in order to make a certain amount of money. So if I want to make 10 websites a year, it's going to make me $32,000. If I want to do social media management for 12 different clients, that will make me $34,000 a year. So I can then set my target to go, how much do I need to make in order to pay for all these people and to pay for all my costs, and then see how much it is I'm going to make at the end of the year down the bottom here. So all this was set up by a very, very savvy employee who did all the different things. I now know how to use it and change it around. My real one looks a bit different to this. This is a very much scaled out version. It doesn't contain everything, but they can know that's for breaking even. So breaking even, I can reduce that down to 1. Will that make me break even? Sort of ish. This one. And that's my target. So if I want to break even, if I want to make a very, very, very small amount of money, well, then I've got to sell 1 each of all those. But if I want to make the money I want to make, then I go down to my ideal here. So I start off with my break even. Now I've got my ideal. So if 1 might be break even, 20 is my ideal. It's where I really want to get to. But if I want to go even further, I need to not sell 10 websites a year or 20. I need to sell 24. And that stretches me up to a much greater level of income there. So as I increase those all in my working spreadsheet, that all links together and gives me at the end of the day what I've got to sell this month. It gives me a target that says, if I want to make this amount of money at the end of the year and be in a very good position, I still need to sell X amount of websites and build those, or X amount of coaching sessions and sell those and get those in, so that I'm able to make that level of money that I want to. So my break even amount, my ideal amount, or my stretch amount is down here. If I was to reach my ideal, which is my goal, that's where I go, okay, in order to make that amount of money, then this is what I do: sell 20 websites, 59 social media management clients, and 68 social marketing clients in order to make all that. Now, a lot of this is because my pricing is too low. So look, the margin per unit is too low. I need higher margins on all of those, especially on social media marketing. So in all those cases, I've got to look at how much it's costing me to do these things and what I need to remove. So that's a very, very, very simple overview of a particular spreadsheet that I use to do that. It's all sort of linked together with all the different things. So my revenue columns in green, my cost columns in red, and then I've got, okay, what my break-even amount is, how much I've got to make, how much my staff costs are over here that then populate into the spreadsheet. And then, of course, there's tax. So we've got the tax rate of 0.1 or 10% that then goes into each one of these things I'm selling. So it tells me how much tax needs to be put aside when I do sell that as well. If you don't even have this as a small business, something like this, and I didn't when I started out, you're in danger of really being a bit of a cowboy with your pricing and just pricing things well out of your break-even amounts. So it's costing you. And I was doing this all the time. I was selling websites for too little. I was selling services for too little because I wanted to service the little guy. Problem is the little guy's got no money. So I had to beat that out of myself and go, I need to chase where the money's at and where the clients are that I want to work with. And they're the ones which are going to help me make the better money. And these days, much more healthy, much more stable, and certainly able to make a semi-decent profit out of it all. Not certainly, I'm not Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos right now, but I'm certainly in a much better position than what I was before. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really hope you learned something out of this and got a bit more of an idea of what to do with your pricing. If you'd like to talk more about this, you can always book me in this month for an ASBAS Digital Solutions call one-to-one. Just go to asbas.com.au or businessstation.com.au and you can book me in there until the end of the month. And then it all comes to an end and a whole new program starting in. And if you do want to register your interest for the next program, the Digital Solutions program, please do that at businessstation.com.au. In the meantime, though, thank you for taking time out of your business to learn more about your business and to, I guess, make a better business happen. And I'll see you in the next one.